shocking skyscraper demolitions that shocked the world. There are plenty of ways buildings and infrastructure can be destroyed, from natural disasters to bombing. While controlled demolition might have some similarities, like explosions and collapsing, it's a far different beast. It is, after all, controlled. That doesn't mean it's any less spectacular, though. Here are some of the tallest building demolitions in the world. Number 5. Supertech Twin Towers, 318 feet, India. The two 100-meter-tall twin towers were located in Uttar Pradesh, Sector 93A in Noida. In August 2022, a breathtaking spectacle of engineering successfully raised down Supertech's twin towers, symbolic of illegal construction and corruption. The Supertech towers were demolished after a Supreme Court order in August 2021 cited its illegal construction. In its verdict, the court pointed out multiple instances wherein the builders colluded with officials and authority in Noida to build the structure in violation of building codes. In 2005, Noida authorities sanctioned building plans for 14 towers with 9 floors each. However, the plans were later revised, and the new design had twin towers with 40 floors each. After this, the Emerald Court Resident Welfare Association moved to the Allahabad High Court, alleging that it was an illegal construction. Following the court order, the twin towers, taller than Delhi's iconic Qutub Minar, were brought down after a 9-year-long legal battle with 3,700 kilograms of explosives in just 9 seconds by waterfall implosion technique. The buildings collapsed like a house of cards. No damage was caused to nearby buildings, the closest two being just 9 meters away. The controlled explosion left behind nearly 55,000 to 80,000 tons of debris, which would take at least 3 months to clear from the site. Over 5,000 residents, along with their pets, of Emerald Court and ATS Village, the two closest societies to the Twin Towers, were evacuated by 8 a.m. Some 2,700 vehicles were also removed from the premises. Volunteers vacated the stray dogs from the area. Before the demolition, an exclusion zone of up to 500 meters around the Twin Towers was created, in which no human or animal was allowed, except for a team of Indian and foreign blasters engaged in the process. The airspace within 1 nautical mile radius above the blast was also briefly unavailable for flights during demolition time. Over 500 police and traffic personnel, besides the Provincial Armed Constabulary and National Disaster Response Force, were deployed to oversee the process. While the demolition took place, the Noida-Greater Noida Expressway was closed from 2:15 p.m. to 2:45 p.m., and the city remained a no-fly zone for drones. Residents of the nearby building would be allowed to return after 6:30 p.m., only after safety clearance from officials. The cooking gas and electricity connections of the buildings near the Twin Towers were cut for safety reasons. As much as 21,000 cubic meters of the debris would be moved out and dumped at an isolated land measuring 5 to 6 hectares in the city's Work Circle 7 limits, and the remaining would be accommodated in the basement areas of the Twin Towers where a pit had been made. Number 4. AFE Tower, 381 feet, Germany. For over 40 years, the 116-meter AFE Tower stood on the Bockenheim campus of the Johann Wolfgang Goethe University in Frankfurt. For the first 3 years of its existence, from 1972 to 1975, it was the tallest building in Frankfurt. For its last few years, it was the 21st tallest before it was finally demolished through a series of controlled explosions at 10 a.m. on Sunday, February 2, 2014. Several months before the demolition, some enterprising street artists began spraying the word Elfenbein in large letters across the top of the building. Elfenbein means ivory, so this university building was unofficially christened the Ivory Tower. A fire in 1997 destroyed part of the 29th floor. The Frankfurt Fire Department repeatedly tried to close down the whole building as a fire hazard, which necessitated a number of expensive stopgap measures to keep it open for a while longer. On that Sunday morning in February 2014, lots of folks came out to see the explosion. Quite a few came by bicycle, so for a few hours, Frankfurt felt almost like Copenhagen. The danger zone around the building, with a radius of about 600 meters, was closed off on the morning of the demolition, and the people living there had to leave their homes. 3 hours after the explosion, nothing was left of the AFE tower, just a surprisingly orderly pile of rubble. Apparently, the building had collapsed straight downwards, just as planned. The neighboring buildings did not appear to have been damaged, though there were reports that 3 windows had been broken in a nearby hotel. According to the building industry website Emporis.com, the demolition of the AFE tower was the largest inner-city controlled blasting Europe has ever seen, and the high-rise was destroyed in a matter of seconds. Across the street, the observatory on the roof of the old physics building was wrapped in a big black plastic tarp to protect it from the huge dust clouds and any bits of flying rubble that might have been produced by the explosion. Number 3. J.L. Hudson Building, 410 feet, United States. The J.L. Hudson Building was a department store located at 1206 Woodward Avenue in downtown Detroit, Michigan. This was the demolition that longtime Detroiters can't or don't want to forget, and for good reason. A quarter century ago, Hudson's flagship department store was imploded, and it turned into a 660 million pound pile of brick, concrete, and steel in less than 10 seconds. It made for dramatic photos and videos. Moreover, many people made unforgettable memories there. For decades, the store was the place to go for fine fashions and Christmas shopping. The store also represented the city's bygone glory days. A new skyscraper is going to go up in its place. But for a while, the 2,124,316 square foot building at Woodward and Gratiot Avenues was among the biggest department stores. Only Macy's in New York was larger. At 410 feet, it was the tallest department store in the world. Hudson's featured more than 200 departments across an incredible 49 acres of floor space and 600,000 items from 16,000 vendors. It employed 12,000 workers, and at its peak, 100,000 customers came each day. The chain closed its downtown store on January 17, 1983, after more than 90 years in business. The company's corporate offices remained in the building, and about 1,200 people still worked there. In 1990, the building was sold to a Windsor company, and the beloved landmark started to become an eyesore, better known for broken windows and vagrants than sales in Santa. For years, that department store was the premier spot to shop in downtown Detroit, and one of the most important department stores in the country. Its heyday was in the 1950s and 60s. In fact, in 1954, Hudson's reportedly had sales of more than $163 million, which is equal to more than $1.4 billion today. Sales started to decline by the mid-70s, and coinciding with the dwindling population of Detroit as residents moved out of the city, Hudson's closed its doors in 1983. The building was imploded at 5:54 p.m., the store's closing time, on October 24, 1998, at a cost of about $12 million. In less than a minute, the building became a 60-foot-high pile of rubble. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries to the 20,000 people who watched the implosion live in person, but it did shatter windows at many of the then-abandoned buildings across Woodward Avenue. After the implosion, the lot was turned into a 4-level underground parking garage in 2001. If you head downtown to Woodward Avenue today, or at any point in the past 5 years, you'd have seen construction crews working on the building of the new Hudson's building. Once complete, the 685-foot-tall building will be the second tallest in the city and state. Starting on the first floor, the building will have retail and experience spaces along Woodward and Grand River. The mixed-use building will have public spaces throughout, venues on the second and third floors, and more. Events in these spaces can accommodate between 50 and 2,500 people. Construction started in 2017 with the groundbreaking ceremony. Since then, 130-foot caissons have been drilled to support the foundation, and more than 10,200 tons of steel and 11,600 beams have been used to create structural support. The development is expected to be finished by 2024. Number 2. J.P. Morgan Chase Tower, 707 feet, United States. 270 Park Avenue, also known as the J.P. Morgan Chase Tower and the Union Carbide Building, was a skyscraper in the Midtown Manhattan neighborhood of New York City. Built in 1960 for the chemical company Union Carbide, it was designed by the architects Gordon Bunshaft and Natalie DeBlois of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. The 52-story building, standing at a massive 707 feet, later became the global headquarters for J.P. Morgan Chase. It was demolished in 2021 to make way for a taller skyscraper at the same address. At the time of its destruction, the Union Carbide building was the tallest voluntarily demolished building in the world. The building occupied a full city block bounded by Madison Avenue, 48th Street, Park Avenue, and 47th Street. It was composed of two sections, a 52-story tower facing Park Avenue to the east and a 12-story annex facing Madison Avenue to the west. About two-thirds of 270 Park Avenue was built atop two underground railroad tracks, feeding directly into Grand Central Terminal to the south. This not only prevented a basement from being built under most of the site, but also required that the lobby be one story above ground level. In February 2018, J.P. Morgan Chase announced it would replace the former Union Carbide building with another skyscraper. This was the first major project to be announced as part of the Midtown East rezoning in the 2010s. The Midtown East rezoning had allowed J.P. Morgan Chase to buy 700,000 square feet of air rights from Grand Central Terminal and St. Bartholomew's Church, transfer the air rights to 270 Park Avenue site, and erect a much larger structure. The announcement prompted objections from the architectural community. The American Institute of Architects New York affiliate expressed concern that the demolition and reconstruction of 270 Park Avenue would be energy intensive, especially as the building had achieved LEED status less than a decade earlier. Preservationists attempted once more to protect the building, but the city government had already expressed its support for J.P. Morgan Chase's new building. Curbed described the Union Carbide building in 2018 as being among New York City's most endangered structures. In January 2019, J.P. Morgan Chase applied to the New York City Department of Buildings for a demolition permit. Howard I. Shapiro & Associates was hired to demolish the building. That May, the New York City Council unanimously approved J.P. Morgan Chase's new headquarters. To secure approvals, J.P. Morgan Chase was required to fund public improvements for the area, including repairs to Grand Central's train shed directly under the site, as well as new public space in its new building. The new building would be almost twice the height of the Union Carbide building, at 1,388 feet tall. This raised concerns that the new building would require deeper foundations that could interfere with the MTA's East Side access tunnels and Grand Central Terminal's rail yards. Due to the building's proximity to numerous skyscrapers, it could not be demolished by implosion or via a wrecking ball. Instead, after hazardous materials were removed, the building was to be deconstructed into pieces. Scaffolding had been erected around the building by late 2019. All decorations, windows, doors, and other fixtures were removed before demolition. Workers also had to conduct asbestos abatement while demolishing the building. The building had been deconstructed to the 30th story in October 2020 when an electrical fire forced a temporary evacuation of the site. The demolition was completed in mid-2021. At the time, the Union Carbide building was the tallest building in the world to be voluntarily demolished, overtaking the Singer building, which had been demolished in 1968. It was also the third tallest building ever to be destroyed, after the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, which collapsed following the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. Number 1. Andorra Thermal Power Plant, 1,125 feet, Spain. The Andorra thermal power plant was located in Andorra Sierra de Arcos in Aragon, Spain. In January 2024, Spanish company Endesa detonated the third boiler of the Andorra thermal power plant, built between 1974 and 1975. This marked a significant step in the process of closing and dismantling the coal plants that the company plans to complete on the peninsula by the year 2027. This demolition, which is added to the previous blasting of the cooling towers and the 343-meter chimney, represents both a symbolic and technical milestone. Endesa implemented meticulous procedures to ensure optimal safety conditions during demolition, especially in the case of boilers and metal elements, whose process differs from concrete structures. This work was executed based on a previous specific project that included a structural analysis of the effects of the preparatory work, as well as the dynamics of the blasting, its sequence, direction of fall, mitigating measures, and securing all structures affected. The demolition used 340 detonators and 620 kilograms of explosives, with a safety radius of 400 meters. After the boiler fell, cutting and preparation work was carried out with heavy machinery to ensure safety and avoid working at height. Each demolition generated around 10,000 tons of metal waste, managed in accordance with environmental regulations. The dismantling of the plant in Teruel, a technically complex operation, involved approximately 250 people, mostly from local companies and the Andorra Sierra de Arcos region, prioritizing local hiring. From the environmental perspective, a selective demolition system was implemented that allowed the segregation and characterization of each of the 260,000 tons that made up the demolition volume. In addition, an environmental monitoring plan was established to minimize impacts on the environment, paying special attention to emissions and discharges during the execution of the works. The reuse of concrete waste was also contemplated with the aim of revalorizing 90% of the waste generated, thus contributing to more sustainable practices. Is there any building you feel we should have included on our list? Let us know in the comments section below. And that's it from us today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to click on the subscribe icon below. Also, give us a like, share the video, and remember to turn on the notification bell for timely updates of our latest uploads. Until next time, thank you for watching.